Hey everyone, let's talk about why I think it is better to own Bitcoin, the actual real thing, as opposed to the stock of MicroStrategy, which is has the ticker symbol MSTR. So, if you're not aware of this, at some point you will be, and it's a fascinating discussion. Okay. So we know what Bitcoin is. So let's talk about what is MicroStrategy. So MicroStrategy is the first major corporation to adopt Bitcoin as its official treasury reserve asset, meaning the primary asset they keep on their balance sheet, like in their bank accounts. And they have bought more Bitcoin than anyone else in the world. In fact, MicroStrategy currently owns about 1.2% of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist, which is a lot of Bitcoin. And they've done that by raising a lot of money by issuing, because they are a publicly traded stock, they've issued a lot of additional stock to buy Bitcoin. So they issue the stock for US dollars, turn around and use those dollars to buy Bitcoin. They've also borrowed quite a bit of money, about something like $4 billion or $5 billion, and used that money to turn around and buy Bitcoin. So right now, the total Bitcoin they own is worth something like $15 billion. And I think they acquired it for a total of, I don't know, half that, or maybe, I think they bought it for 9.5 billion and it's worth like 15 billion or something like that. So they are up in their investment. And, but they have about $4 billion of debt that, at some point they need to pay off. Okay. So a lot of people are buying MicroStrategy, and the main people who are buying the MicroStrategy stock are people who cannot buy Bitcoin directly. There are a lot of major hedge funds and foreign sovereign wealth funds that are prohibited by their statutes from owning commodities or any individual. Basically they can only buy publicly traded company stocks. And so they cannot buy the Bitcoin ETFs. They can't buy Bitcoin directly. And MicroStrategy is the only thing they can buy. So what are they doing? Well, they are buying MicroStrategy stock instead of Bitcoin because they literally can't buy it. But a lot of consumer average people have seen that MicroStrategy stock has outperformed Bitcoin, meaning it's going up faster than Bitcoin, and are therefore buying MicroStrategy instead of Bitcoin, and think that that is a good idea. So I'm going to cover why I think that is not a good idea. Okay, so first of all, the problem is MicroStrategy's stock price is trading at about 2.5 times the value of the Bitcoin they own. So in round numbers, the Bitcoin they own is about worth maybe $15 billion. Again, these are round numbers. 15 billion, but the company is valued at more than 40 billion. Okay, so 2.5 times, more than 2.5 times the Bitcoin they own. So if you think about owning a stock as a share of Bitcoin, you're essentially buying stock in MicroStrategy, but that stock represents a much smaller amount of Bitcoin than you can buy straight up just, on Coinbase. So yes, it is outperforming Bitcoin right now, but that's only because the stock is trading at a massive premium, meaning the stock is trading at a price significantly above the value of the Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Okay, so what could possibly go wrong? Well, I'm glad you asked. It turns out a lot can go wrong. So the best real world example of something like MicroStrategy, and first of all, let me be clear. I am a huge fan of Michael Saylor, the founder, CEO, and chairman the founder and chairman now of MicroStrategy. Huge fan. He's a genius. I post his videos. He's just fantastic. I mean, way smarter than I am. I'm a huge, huge, huge fan. And if I were him, I would be doing exactly what he's doing. He is doing a genius play. He has found the closest thing to an infinite money glitch that exists in the financial system. And he has built a company. He has taken his company from worth about $1 billion to worth $43 billion with this Bitcoin strategy over the last 4 years. So good for him. I'm a huge fan. He's a genius. Let's all be clear on that. Okay, that being said, should you buy shares of his company when they are priced at more than 2.5 times the amount of Bitcoin on the balance sheet? Well, the problem is, people say, well, yeah, but the premium could get even higher, and he can borrow money at cheap interest rates and turn around and buy Bitcoin, so the amount of Bitcoin per share goes up. That is true right now, but that is only true as long as the stock is trading at a premium. As soon as the stock is not trading at a premium, it no longer works to issue additional shares to buy more Bitcoin or to borrow money and buy Bitcoin because you really need, not completely, I'm oversimplifying here, but effectively you need that significant premium in order to make it work to buy more Bitcoin. And eventually that premium could go away. Okay, so again, if you have the option of buying Bitcoin, I would buy Bitcoin rather than something that, rather than a container that is 2/3 empty and owns 1/3 as much Bitcoin as the price you're paying, with the hope being that MicroStrategy will be able to lever up, and buy enough Bitcoin to, be worth more than you could have just straight up bought the Bitcoin for. Also, for people who cannot buy Bitcoin directly because they manage convertible bond, investment funds and things like that, of course, I would buy MicroStrategy. It's going to perform way better, I think, than, bond offerings and things like that. But again, that does not apply probably to a single person that's ever watched one of my Facebook videos, because all of us can just go set up a Coinbase account and buy the real thing. Okay, so what could go wrong? Well, the biggest historical correlation to something like a Bitcoin holding strategy is the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. Now, if you remember the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, it's because it played a major role in the massive, crypto winter of 2022. Meaning the down market, the massive bear market, meaning down market, pessimistic market of 2022. And the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust played a major role in that. So what happened? Well, Grayscale was a fund that you could put money in, and they would issue shares, and those shares were backed by Bitcoin. The problem was it was a non-redeemable fund, which means money could go in, but the Bitcoin could never come out until the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust was converted to an exchange-traded fund, which ultimately happened much later than anyone thought. So the fund initially, because just like MicroStrategy, it attracted a lot of money that could not invest in Bitcoin directly. A lot of that money went to Grayscale because it could not buy Bitcoin directly. And as a result of that, they ended up, just like MicroStrategy, trading at a significant premium. They were something like 50% higher than the amount of Bitcoin they actually had on their balance sheet. Now, they couldn't borrow money the same way MicroStrategy does. There's a lot of, financial engineering that MicroStrategy can do that they couldn't do, but they could, they were a publicly traded, entity that held Bitcoin. Okay. So they were trading at a 50% premium. The problem was, over time, everybody piled in who wanted to buy Bitcoin via that mechanism, and the premium started going away. But a bunch of people who had bought that stock had done so with borrowed money, which is leverage. And as the premium started going away, anybody who bought stock in that entity had to hold it for 6 months. So what they were doing is they were buying stock at sort of the basis price, $100 a share, let's call it. And then 6 months later, they were selling it for $150 a share, and it was like free money because there was this 50% premium. But eventually the premium started going away, and the people who had borrowed a ton of money expecting to get 50% more money 6 months later were then only getting 25% more money later, or 10% more money later, or 1% more money later. And eventually the premium, which is what really created the huge problem, the premium turned into a discount. So not only did it stop at zero, it kept going. And eventually people went from being super exuberant about the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust to super pessimistic about it, worried that the Bitcoin that went in would never come out. As the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, continued to deny applications for the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust to convert to an ETF, they denied that in 2017, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. Sometime around 2021, the premium flipped to a discount on the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, and up through about 2022, the discount went as high as 50%. So literally, the price of the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust was trading at a 50% discount to the price of the Bitcoin they held. Now, almost nobody thought that was possible because they were like, why would the shares ever be priced less than the Bitcoin that backs them? And the answer was because people got worried that the Bitcoin that was in the fund would literally never come out. And if it never comes out, it can't be valued because it's like in a lockbox where somebody, threw away the key. And so it traded as high as a 50% discount. And that wrecked a bunch of companies. As a result of that, the bankruptcies associated with Three Arrows Capital, Genesis, BlockFi, Voyager, Celsius, a lot of those bankruptcies in 2022, including FTX, almost all of those companies had large holdings of the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust that they were trying to do this sort of premium strategy with, and then it turned into a discount, and they all ended up upside down. And there was a bunch of reasons for their bankruptcies, but that was a major common thread behind most of the bankruptcies, was that they had ended upside down on this Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. So what could go wrong with MicroStrategy? Again, huge fan. I am a huge fan of Michael Saylor. I'm a huge fan of MicroStrategy. I'm a huge fan of their strategy as a whole, and I think he's a genius. But if you are buying shares of the of MicroStrategy, you could end up just like the people who are buying shares in the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust when it was at a significant premium, and then suddenly when it flips to a discount, you are absolutely upside down, and it is a huge problem. So what would that look like? Well, what it would look like is at some point the premium tops out. I don't know if it's right now at 2.5x or 2.9x, or nobody knows, but at some point it tops out, and just like with the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, people start worrying that maybe the Bitcoin will never come out. Michael Saylor has already said that MicroStrategy will never sell their Bitcoin, ever, literally never. They will never sell their Bitcoin. And if MicroStrategy never sells their Bitcoin, literally forever, at some point, people could get worried that the Bitcoin is going to be stuck inside MicroStrategy, and instead of being willing to give them, a 2.9x premium on the Bitcoin they own, that premium could drop very quickly negative, and even just like the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, turn into a 50% discount, as happened with it got close to 50% discount with the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. So what happens in that scenario is people say, well, look, I don't know how much Bitcoin they're going to end up owning. Let's say $30 billion. I don't know, pick a number. But it is absolutely possible that MicroStrategy owns $30 billion or $50 billion of Bitcoin or $100 billion of Bitcoin, but that the stock actually trades at a price significantly less than that. Meaning if they own $50 billion of Bitcoin, it's possible that just like with the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, the stock could actually trade only at $25 billion. And if someone asks, wait, how on earth could a company with $50 billion of Bitcoin be valued at $25 billion? The answer is because if people believe that Bitcoin will never be unlocked, it will never be sold, and that the value of that Bitcoin will therefore never be realized and recognized in the marketplace on behalf of the shareholders, then people start to worry that, hey, why am I in this thing where, Hotel California, the Bitcoin goes in, it never comes out, and I own a share of essentially a lockbox where the key has been thrown away. So that is what happened with the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. It is absolutely possible that could happen with MicroStrategy. That does not change the fact that his company started being worth $1 billion, and I think in all scenarios, he and his shareholders, his original shareholders and the shareholders over the last few years, I think in all scenarios, all of them end up way better off. So good for him. He's done an amazing job. He's done an incredible job for his shareholders. He's a genius. I'm just a huge fan of Michael Saylor. But does that mean you should be buying shares in MicroStrategy, MSTR, that ticker, right now at somewhere between a 2.5 and a 3x premium to the value of the Bitcoin they actually own? You can, but you are banking on the fact that they can increase their Bitcoin per share, the amount of Bitcoin they own per share through, sophisticated financial engineering. And you are banking on the fact that premium is not going to turn into a discount or that the premium of, 2.5x on the Bitcoin is not going to turn into 2x and then 1.5x and then maybe down to 1x. And you're also banking on the fact that 2.5x premium is not going to turn into, like with the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, a 50% discount. Obviously, if it does, that's just absolutely brutal, and it means MicroStrategy goes from outperforming Bitcoin to massively underperforming Bitcoin. So, for example, if that 2.5x premium goes to a 50% discount, that is it cuts it from 5x. It's the price goes down to 20% of its current value. It's just a radical reduction as compared to the way Bitcoin itself would perform. So, am I buying MicroStrategy stock? No. Is it possible that a lot of people have made money in the past based on MicroStrategy's, the genius job they've done? Yes. And if you're one of them, good for you. Does that mean you should still own MicroStrategy stock, or that you should buy it when it is trading at an insanely high premium today? Well, in my opinion, that is very high risk. So good luck. The last thing I'll say here is Bitcoin humbles everybody. I mean, Bitcoin is just really good at humbling everybody. And every time somebody gets too big for their britches or starts feeling like they are the CEO of Bitcoin or the king of Bitcoin or the czar of Bitcoin, and obviously, you know, MicroStrategy owns more Bitcoin than any other individual or company in the entire world right now. And they own more Bitcoin than any government, including the US government, China, anybody. Like, MicroStrategy owns more Bitcoin than any other single entity in the entire world right now. But Bitcoin has this incredible ability to humble people. I mean, anybody who gets a bit too big for their britches, they borrow money to buy Bitcoin, they start to feel like they're invincible. Bitcoin will absolutely positively humble you. So if I were Michael Saylor, one, I would be doing exactly what he's doing because it is pure genius. But two, I would wake up every day and I would say a prayer to God. God, please don't let me get prideful, and please don't turn me upside down and humble me the way Bitcoin usually does to people who get too big for their britches. So if I had to predict, I would predict that, again, I shouldn't make predictions because, every human prediction has a low probability of success. But as much as I love everything that Michael Saylor is doing and MicroStrategy, as much as I think it's genius, and as much as I think thousands or millions of other companies and even countries around the world will ultimately do exactly what he's doing, and that will be good for Bitcoin and that'll be amazing. As much as I agree with all of that, I think there is a relatively high probability that the premium that he is getting on his Bitcoin at some point will turn to a discount. And he will go from looking like the world's biggest genius, practically the CEO of Bitcoin, to a very humble individual who, borrowed more than he could really quite afford to pay back. And that he's just going to be, I think, very humbled at some point. So that would be my prediction, only because Bitcoin has done that to literally everybody else who thought they were too big for their britches and decided to get creative with their financial engineering. And as soon as everybody thought they were a genius and they ended up on the front cover of Time magazine and all that, eventually everything went upside down. So stay humble, stack as much Bitcoin as you can. And if I were you, I would be buying actual Bitcoin, the real thing, and not MicroStrategy stock. And at the same time, I am cheering him on. Good for Michael Saylor. He's a genius. He's been a huge benefit to the Bitcoin community. I am a huge fan of his, and if I were him, I'd be doing exactly what he is doing. So good for him. I just would not be buying MicroStrategy stock right now. But that's just one random person's opinion, and this is not financial advice, legal advice, tax advice. It's not any of that. It's one random person's opinion. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks.